Another incredible Formula 1 season has come to an end, with the Red Bull driver Max Verstappen leading the way. Although Verstappen won almost all the races of the season, the grid was still quite eventful. So how about a little recap of 10 of the most dramatic moments of the season? And we'll start with Alonso's dramatic entrance into the 2023 Formula 1 season. Number 10, Alonso's performance at Bahrain. In the 2022 season, Fernando Alonso was driving for Alpine Renault. Alpine was not among the top tier teams, but their performance was better than that of Aston Martin. So imagine the surprise when it was revealed that the three-time world champion would be joining Aston Martin in 2023. Little did they know that Aston Martin was coming with fire in their wheels. The very first race of the season, which was held in Bahrain, came with a shocking surprise. The 2023 Aston Martin car was a rocket on wheels, and Alonso was ready to make the most of it. The three-time world champion had not one but two incredible wheel-to-wheel moments on his way to a surprising podium at the opening race. It started with an intense battle with Lewis Hamilton that lasted almost a lap. The two drivers kept going neck to neck with no plans to concede. But at turn 10, Alonso drove ahead to win the battle. Then his next target was Ferrari driver Carlos Sainz. Their battle also lasted a few more minutes before Alonso eventually took over to earn the third podium. It was a beautiful sight to behold. If you remember this moment fondly, then you would also love this moment that happened at the Monaco Grand Prix. Number 9, Esteban Ocon's fight to the finish. After Alonso left Alpine high and dry, Esteban Ocon had to put his big boy boots on and work together with his new teammate Pierre Gasly. The beginning of the season was quite tough as their car wasn't performing as well as anticipated. Then in Monaco, Ocon surprised everyone with an incredible performance. It started at the qualifying race. The French driver found himself fighting with the top teams for pole position. If those teams hadn't been cautious, he would have achieved his goal. But the incredible day was the actual race. The race started very tricky as it was raining heavily and drivers could barely see. Many drivers crashed into barriers and had trouble with tyres to use, but Ocon raced ahead with no hassle. The only challenge came when he had to overtake Carlos Sainz of Ferrari and Lewis Hamilton of Mercedes. The two drivers put up a very strong fight, but Ocon was determined and soon only two cars were ahead of him. He remained that way till he crossed the finish line, thereby earning the team's first podium position since 2021. Although that was the only podium he earned for the season, it was quite a remarkable moment for the driver and the team. But as incredible as Ocon's performance was, it only came close to what the great Verstappen did at the Dutch Grand Prix. Number 8, Dutch Grand Prix. Before the Dutch GP, Verstappen was already way ahead of his contemporaries, but the performance at Zandvoort is one to be remembered. During the qualifying race, things looked very bleak for the Red Bull driver, as the heavy rainfall disturbed his performance and pushed him down to 13th place. His countrymen were most likely worried that he wouldn't be able to finish in first place. But as a person who doesn't accept defeat, Verstappen came to the race with a zeal so intense that no driver came close in lap time. From 13th place, he moved on to first place in no time, and it seemed like a magic trick. Once he was in first place, it was evident that no one would come close. That win became the 11th win of the season and his 9th consecutive win, where he equaled Sebastian Vettel's record. Although he later broke the record by a margin, that moment was beautiful. Now we'll move on to another drama that occurred at the beginning of the season with Red Bull's sister team. Number 7, AlphaTauri's hot seat. In 2022, an AlphaTauri seat opened up and Nick de Vries, who had impressed the Red Bull chief Helmut Marko, got the seat. But as the season progressed, it was clear that it was a wrong move. Helmut began threatening the Formula E champion with the hopes of making him perform better, but his performance only became worse. Then after 10 races, Helmut had enough and Nick was sent packing. Daniel Ricciardo immediately took over and everyone expected a huge difference. Then he went ahead to break his wrist and Liam Lawson took over. Liam performed excellently well, and it made it quite hard for Ricciardo to return, but the Australian driver fought it way back and finished 7th in Mexico upon his return. Now there's a huge back and forth over who deserves to be in the seat for the 2024 season. Well, that's a discussion for another day. The next dramatic moment to be mentioned was the Hungarian Grand Prix. Number 6, Hamilton ends his spell. Since things went wrong in 2021, the Mercedes driver has been trying so hard to regain his footing. Although he didn't win any race this season, he was able to break one of his barren spells. At the Hungarian Grand Prix, he ended his dry spell of not earning a pole position. The British driver had raced with all his might at qualifying to ensure he got ahead. Fortunately, his effort counted, as he was 0.03 of a second ahead of Verstappen. As short as the time difference was, it was all he needed. Although he couldn't translate it into a win at the actual race, his pole position earned him the record for the highest poles at a single track, putting him ahead of Ayrton Senna, 8 in Imola, and Michael Schumacher, 8 in Suzuka. However, Hamilton was not the only one who got an opportunity to shine. Number 5. Piastri the rookie with great promise. Oscar Piastri joined McLaren for his debut season in 2023. Although Lando Norris is the star of the team, Piastri's performance has earned him great respect, and the most incredible one was his performance in Qatar. The rookie driver had shown earlier in the season that sprint races were his strong forte by starting and finishing second in Belgium. But in Qatar, he raced with all his might to earn his first Formula 1 victory. The race was chaotic, and initially he lost his first place to Mercedes driver George Russell. But he soon got ahead. Then Verstappen appeared behind him, and he was almost certain he would lose his position to the Dutch driver. But as fate would have it, Piastri started and finished the race in first place. It was such an amazing moment for both the driver and the team. But looking back at the Austrian Grand Prix, it was filled with drama no one really cared for. Number 4. Track limit troubles. This season, drivers couldn't help but get frustrated about the track limits, but the race that took the crown of the one with the highest track limit mess was the Austrian Grand Prix. You see, as easy as staying within the track might seem to non-drivers, it really is not. The most annoying part is that drivers may not be immediately punished after pushing the limits, but much later due to the marshals not noticing on time, and that was part of what caused the mess in Austria. So many track violations took place at the race. In fact, only 2 of the drivers on the grid, Fernando Alonso and George Russell, were able to stick to the rules. 7 penalties were doled out during the race, but that was not all. Many who thought they had escaped found themselves being handed penalties after the race. It was so bad that the result wasn't released until 5 hours after the race ended, and 14 drivers had their positions changed after crossing the finish line. The likes of Hamilton, Perez, Gasly, Sainz and Albon were victims of this change in position. It was a great debacle, but in Australia, things were even more dramatic. Number 3. Australian havoc. The third race of the season, which was held in Australia, was filled with so much drama that an all-time record of 3 red flags in a race was made. And it all started with Alex Albon hitting the barriers after 6 laps. Before the crash of the Williams driver was completely sorted, Kevin Magnussen's wheel got detached in a crash and a second red flag came out. The race was stopped but restarted not long after. And immediately after, Sainz and Alonso collided. Pierre Gasly and Esteban Ocon both retired, and Logan Sargent crashed into Nick de Vries. If that wasn't drama, what is? The race had to be restarted again, and this time around the safety car was right ahead and no racing was done. The remaining 12 cars on the grid crossed the checkered line as they were to end the race. But that was not the last drama on the Formula 1 grid for the season. Number 2. Verstappen's loss in Singapore. Singapore was an absolute disaster for the Red Bull driver. His performance had everyone speculating that his good days were over. First, he couldn't make the top 10 positions during the qualifying race, but no one was worried as they expected him to perform his magic. Then, in the actual race, Verstappen was nowhere to be found, and the Ferrari, Mercedes and McLaren drivers seized the opportunity to fight for first place. Luckily, Ferrari driver Carlos Sainz made the most of it and won his second race ever. Although Verstappen came back stronger in Japan, he couldn't believe his performance in Singapore. And the last but not least is the race at Las Vegas. Number 1. Drama at Las Vegas. The race at Las Vegas was the first in 40 years. Although everything started with a good start with an entertaining show, the drama of the track was almost too intense. From the start of the race, Charles Leclerc and Verstappen were in an intense battle for the win. At one point it seemed like Leclerc would completely take over, but Verstappen wouldn't have it. So he pushed him off the track, which caused Leclerc to crash into Russell. Although Verstappen got a penalty and a damaged wing for it, he still drove to victory. So what do you think of these moments? Let us know in the comments section. And don't forget to like, share and subscribe.